I wanted to share a story with you. This particular theme is about visualized healing, which is what guided visualization, guided imagery is all about. Now, as a specialist in the area of mindfulness meditations, guided visualization, um, and all the different ways in which the health of the mind, mental well-being, brain health factors into that. Um, I find that it's really important to fine tune for folks exactly how guided visualization can work for them. Now, it's really important to get the practitioner who can help you truly reach the goal that you hope to reach. And again, one of the ways in which to make sure that you're getting the assistance and the help that you need is to find a practitioner who actually practices what he or she teaches. And I think that makes a world of difference. Now, in order for that to be true for the practitioner, he or she has to be very honest with him or herself. And it's so important because that then translates into the teachings that you share with others. And it cannot be emphasized enough. And it isn't a halfway gesture to try and implement this into your life as a practitioner. It's a mandatory aspect of how you can better help someone with their needs when they come to you and if they come to you. And it's also important to note that now, through this story, I just want to give you an example of what I mean by this. I'm going to share the story about Beth. I'll call her Beth because her name will remain, of course, private. So she never did guided visualization before, but found that a skilled specialist helps her and eventually helped her to deal with her anger. Now, there's a lot of people walking around with deep rooted anger, and it's very challenging sometimes to cope with or even understand how anger can show up in our lives. And again, anger is a natural part of the human growth process and developmental process. No matter how old you are, everyone deals with anger, but it's about how you actually work with your anger that determines how healthy you are. Your state of mental health depends on that. Your relationships depend on that. So Beth found that she was an angry person, found that she had difficulty truly living her life in the fullest way. So here's a quote from Beth. She said, "When I started acting like my mother in my marriage, she knew that it was a turning point at this point. She said that her husband was dumbfounded. She went on to explain that her husband is a decent, reasonable man who couldn't fathom where all of this bubbling anger was coming from. And that's the way anger works. Anger that you suppress and try to stuff down and try to put on um, um, a presentation that isn't true to you sorting out that anger can show up in that bubbling way, right? It's like the cauldron that needs to start to bubble up to the top, and then without warning, sometimes it can show itself on the surface of your life, and the people in your lives will see that and experience that. So she went on to say, Beth, that is, she went on to say, when he pointed it out to her, she couldn't fathom how it was that here she was just exercising this anger righteousness, so to speak, right? And she took a long, hard look at herself, a look at her culture that she grew up in. She went to see this specialist to overhaul what it was that was truly going on. Now, whoever you choose again as a specialist for yourself, whether it's a psychologist, a psychotherapist, um, a mental health provider with different specializations, etc., it is important that this particular mental health provider doesn't simply practice the theory on the surface level. He or she must understand how to work with this particular emotion or any emotion that you have a challenge with. And again, it is crucial for this practitioner, the specialist, to be practicing it in his or her life. It is crucial to be a real, true, balanced service to the individual who asks for help. And Beth realized that, and she found the sessions to be very helpful. As she practiced guided visualization, because this is what was the turning point for her, when she practiced guided visualization and imagery based on the structure and the flow that was offered to her through this specialist, she noticed a change in her life. Now, Beth is a real person. Now, I've come across a number of Beths in my practice. And it could also be Ben, Beth and Ben. Let's just use those pseudonyms for a while, right? And they have mentioned a similar thing to myself directly. So I use Beth as a true story and also as symbolizing sometimes the resistance an individual can have to healing practices that are outside of the mainstream. Allopathic medicine is a service that's good for what it was actually designed to do, but it doesn't necessarily apply to mental health. So mental health practices are more inclined to respond to lifestyle, habits, and behavioral changes. And again, it is important that the practitioner who's a specialist applies the same tools that he or she is teaching to their own lives. That's the only way you can truly be helpful to someone else. Now, if you're a psychotherapist or a psychologist or a mental health practitioner who offers medications to patients for their needs and their different range of emotions, depending on each case-by-case scenario, you will, of course, determine what kind of medication is warranted and for how long that medication will be applied. However, some of those mental health concerns are actually about habits. They're actually about lifestyle. They're actually about circumstances. Now, as a psychologist or psychotherapist or someone who is steeped into social work and can diagnose and assess and suggest medications, that is a valid tool to use, but it's not the only tool. So as a mental health provider myself, I specialize in lifestyle, habitual, behavioral changes, and note as well, there's a whole litany of history behind the impact of lifestyle, the impact of the history of a person's life that makes their mental health and well-being a challenge. So Beth is an example of that, where she saw these habits, these behavioral applications in her life growing up, and that added to her suffering with anger and experiencing elements of mental health illness. So by practicing guided visualization and imagery, something outside of the mainstream allopathic applications, Beth found her answer. Now, I've come across this many times over the 20 years that I've been teaching, and I've been in this practice and applied this practice to my own life. This is the only way I can sit here and even talk to you. because it would be just a waste of time for everybody concerned if I wasn't practicing this myself. It would just make no sense. So I speak to you about this because this is something that is I can relate to in my own life for the various areas in my life that I've used it in, and for the students that I've come across who will spend an hour with me and notice a difference at the end of that hour after applying an application that I've taught them, or a teaching that they've applied for themselves, and they notice a difference in a short amount of time. And then with the maintenance of that practice, how they grow more full into understanding what works for them. And each person, of course, benefits according to how their nature truly embraces what I'm teaching them. So guided visualization is one of the tools that I teach. Now it's important for you, if you've never tried guided visualization before, take a note of the posts that I've put out in the past. You may have come across one or two of those about guided visualization applications. Today I'm simply talking to you about a story of an individual and a little bit of my own story as well, applying this particular tool to my life over a long period of time. And I can definitely say I've seen a marked difference in my life, and I've seen a marked difference in some of my students' lives as well. And the students who benefit are the ones who commit to it and take ownership for how they continue the practice. You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make them drink. I forgot who said that, but it's a true quote. It's a true statement. You can show someone what to do. You can guide them, but whether or not they maintain the practice and actually stick to the plan that is specialized for them, that's how I teach it. Personalized, because one shoe does not fit everyone, right? Now, it's important for you to practice and keep practicing in order for it to be true for you. What Beth experienced might not be what you experience if you try guided visualization. What Ben does might not be what you experience when you do guided visualization, because you are unique, right? So I'm going to stop right there. I thought I'd share this lengthy guided visualization story with you, just so that you know that this is something that isn't about some fluffy sort of theory that isn't real. It's a true thing. It's a real thing. And athletes and lots of different people across the world practice this. I practice this daily, so I can vouch for it, definitely. But it's a real thing, all right? And you have the power to ignite that in yourself. And of course, find the right teacher, okay? Someone who actually practices what he or she teaches, okay? All right, with that said, Guided Visualization Mondays, signing off. Enjoy your day. Namaste.